good, y'all? It's your boy Herb,
And it's your girl Mo.
and welcome to our soon-to-be
world-renowned podcast, Young, Black, and Figuring It Out.
What up, though?
What it do?
Whatever we tell it, you know what I'm saying? How you feeling?
I'm feeling great, except for my allergies. But yeah, great.
Shout out to the dust, y'all. Yeah, I'm feeling amazing too. And listen, y'all probably like, listen, right now it's time to figure out what have you figured out this week. But we ain't gonna do that this time because we don't got time for that. You know why we ain't got time for that?
I know.
Why?
We got a special guest.
A big time special guest to talk about a special topic who we're about to introduce in a minute. But just to set the stage for this topic, it's gonna be a real spicy one. What we talking about?
Let's talk about sex, baby.
We're gonna talk about that. Yeah, so today we're gonna talk about sex and many aspects and components of sex. We know people heard that and excited. They gotta be excited to talk about that. But before we dive into all of the topics and questions and good stuff and maybe some bad stuff, we're gonna introduce our special guest, celebrity guest in the building.
Woo, woo.
Shayla right here. Let's clap it up for Shayla.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, tell us about yourself.
So I am a school social worker, and I also work for the city of Rochester with the PIC team, Person in Crisis, as a crisis social worker. And I'm very glad that you guys invited me on today to talk about sex.
Yes, because she dope, y'all.
Yeah, dope. Glad to have her. So yeah, we've been talking about this topic for a long time.
Okay.
Mainly because we know that one, just the fact that sex sells, and the fact that that's the case, I think really gets to the point that it's not as normalized as it should be. You know what I mean? And so today we want to dive into it, but just want to ask, you all, let's have a conversation. Why are we passionate about this topic in general? Besides it being just a spicy, fun topic.
I'll just start. I mean, the lack of education. There's just been so many times I've encountered people discussing certain things, and these are people who are married, young people, and just a lack of knowledge,
Right.
or they don't have any clue what it is they want out of their relationship in
Right,
any sort of
right.
sexual way. And when you try to get to the heart of, well, why is that? They just feel so much shame, and they're like, well, I was taught not to. I don't know. And it's like this nervous energy, and so you have these sexless marriages happening, and it's like, okay,
Right.
this is a growing concern then.
Right. Yeah.
I also think just because, even with the increase of STDs and STIs in Monroe County related to teenagers,
Yeah.
if we can talk about our favorite foods and the latest sneakers that are coming out and what store we're going to go get them, then something that you are engaging in that you might find pleasurable, why can't we also talk about that
Right.
as well? So
Yeah, I like that, and I think for me too, it's all of those things. And on top of that, I think sometimes the fear of talking about sex also promotes some of the things that happen, some of the sexual assaults, some molestation, and all the different things,
Absolutely.
because there's so much taboo around that, and folks won't talk about it, and they almost are ashamed to not talk about it. They
Right.
don't bring
Right.
up things that have affected them negatively, And on the positive side, it's like if you can really dive into and have thorough conversations early, people can kind of own their sexual experiences
Yes.
versus
Right.
being a victim or add effect to it, So that's what I'm really hoping to get out of today,
Right.
As we dive into it. So let's dive right into it, right? So I just want to set the stage of why this is such an important topic and give some stats.
yes, I
Always
love statistics.
Interesting, okay? So let's dive into some of these. So first, sex education is only required in 29 states, but only 18 states are required to deliver medically accurate information, right? So you might educate, but it might not be actually medically accurate, which means that there can be so many different contexts to that.
Right.
I'm gonna dive into that in a second. Only 9 states are require sex education to be culturally appropriate and unbiased, right? And so if you think about what bias does, and we know all about that, what could that be teaching our kids? Then again, 28 states require stressing abstinence, which means that they might not be getting education.
Right.
The education might not be, don't talk about it, don't do it.
Yes.
And then a few more, just to spice it up a little bit. An estimated 55% of male and female teens have had sexual intercourse by the age of 18. So by 18, over half of the teens have already had sex. Among the teens who did not have sex in this study, the most common reasons were religion or against the morals, haven't found the right person yet, and the third highest one was don't want to get a female pregnant by men. So yeah, So let's talk about this. Let's dive into it. Those are a lot of stats. We can kind of pick things apart. But I think when you hear those things and some of those things, what's your reaction?
Initially, like with the religion and culture, right? So I work at a high school where Blacks, we are the majority, but we do have different religions and cultures showcased throughout the school. And now that it just has my mind like wondering like, I definitely should be having conversations with these students, just to like be more inclusive of like what do they need, especially when we're bringing in educators, right? Because like it's a specific curriculum, but it's not tailored to religion and culture. So when you mention that, I'm like, yeah, there's a little bit more work I need to do now for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you're saying like almost taking into consideration that a lot of the miseducation might be as a result of people's culture or religion specifically.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any experience you want to speak to with that?
Of course. Man, okay, so you saying that has me like, well, I was in Brooklyn all my life, and it was like elementary, middle school, and high school where Black and Hispanic was all my peers. And I can remember having sex ed twice, and I think second or third grade. I don't know. I was young in elementary school. And then I had to be a senior in high school. There's a large gap. There was absolutely nothing, no discussion, no nothing. And I remember being in middle school. I think I was a sixth grader. And I heard that these eighth graders had sex. And we were all like, what? What is? And it was just confusing. It was surprising. It was like, huh? Why is that happening? So my thoughts just being like, dang, I remember ninth grade and a classmate disappeared for a while. Came back, everybody was like, she had a baby. I'm like, had a baby? It was it just didn't make sense because no one was actually discussing it or talking to you about it. And my parents ain't telling me nothing. You know, and we grew up in church, so abstinence is it, and that's all I knew. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that's such a good thing. It's such a good point because like the things that were happening and it would pop up and you're like, whoa, what is that? I think that goes to the idea that regardless of if you have the conversation or not, education is happening. It might be trial and error. It might be from your peers, but education is happening. And so like for me to even look at this and say that only 29 states require that, to me, like that's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Right, especially the way it affects lives. And you know, I know you work high schoolers. How have you seen that affect students? You know,
I mean, it affects students in the sense of they just don't know, right? But then you're also creating more like trauma. You're creating more poverty. But then like everybody's always like shocked, right? Like, well, why are things increasing? Why are teen pregnancies increasing? Why? And it's like, well, no one's being proactive, right? And then the reactive is to either like take the student out because you're one and we don't want that to like spread right throughout the school. Or it's kind of like a hush, like, well, did you take care of this on your own? Okay, cool. And it's like nowadays, like group chats are like the thing, right? With our kids. And it's like, even though you try to keep it out of the school, it's still going to get around.
100%.
So why can't we just take that time to like indulge in the curriculum related to health?
Right.
And like when you mentioning like high school, same for us too. Like, okay, middle school, you got it. Like, it was like one unit in health class. And it was like, ooh, okay. Right? And then like one time in high school, and you're like, yeah, but like, I have other questions, but there was like no time to like ask any other questions.
Right.
That's good. And you know, for me, the first time I remember having like a health and something class. And it was like 8th grade, 9th grade maybe. But the first time I really got actual like adequate, substantial sexual education was my senior year in college.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And it was Dr. Bassett.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sex ed.
Sex ed. And it was. I'm like, I'm learning stuff I had no clue about.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. I was like, I should have got this 8th grade, 9th grade.
Yes.
Because it sets you up in such a better trajectory. You know, and I'm not saying it didn't happen, but the fact that I don't remember it at all says it wasn't enough.
No,
you know?
At all.
And I think we need to start to like put that in there. And then on top of that, let's talk about the abstinence stat. Like that, like 28 states are requiring like abstinence. It's like, okay. Now, to me, that's like delusion.
Yes.
Because if you go down to the numbers, 55%, over half of teens are saying that they've had sex already.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like we need to respond to what's actually happening.
Right.
You know?
Like what's occurring, guys. I think they think it's preventative and it's clearly not working. It's like the DARE program. It's like
Yeah.
not actually working.
Right.
But we want to hold just hold to this. And it always confuses me because you like look at parents and grandparents. It's like, y'all were doing these things. Why are we acting brand new? Like these new kids are doing something different. Like, it works the same, guys.
Yeah.
Right.
But we don't want to have the conversation. I get so confused by that.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested to see like the states that are practicing abstinence, are like they conservative too? Are they conservative states as well?
Right.
Because that like the political realm, like that just makes sense, but it's still not making sense.
Right.
Right.
So
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense. And like it's actually hurting people because it's adding like abstinence to me is kind of right in like lockstep with shame, like a shame culture,
shame and guilt.
shame and guilt, and we know like I wonder like there's no stats on that I have right here about that, but I wonder like what is that doing to people's mental health?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like when people can't really explore and understand and know their sexuality in a way, like what is that then doing to their mental health when they do end up having sex, right? Looking at these numbers. Or the shame and guilt or fear about actually having sex and all of those things that probably are a byproduct of abstinence or teaching just abstinence.
Right. When they
Exactly.
just teach it. Yes.
Yeah, like just abstinence. And sometimes I think the why behind stuff, because if people say, yeah, don't have sex, abstinence, here are the reasons why. And I still wouldn't necessarily agree with that teaching, but I don't think that always comes or accompanies that.
No.
You know?
Right.
Like, have you all seen why? Like, you both work in school systems. Have you seen, before you all got there and helped out, the why, the why being taught as to some of the conversations around sex, like why to or not to do or how to do it? Is the why being taught as much as it needs to?
No, before we brought in an outside resource, no. It's just like, not even, I mean, it's like the whole biology too of sex. It's like not just about like intercourse, but it's about like your body, knowing your body
Yes.
and going through puberty and what does that look like and like
Right.
what is consensual sex, what is not consensual. Like it's so much that goes into like sex education that it's just not there. And like I know for a fact in New York State, the curriculum is like 1 or 2 units, and it doesn't get to the nitty gritty
Right.
of just the regular common like questions that are coming up that like at one point in time came up in our heads, right?
Right.
That are coming up, and it's just that's normal, but it's
Yeah.
no follow up.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No one really talks about hormones and anything. Like
Nothing.
Like kids have raging hormones and they're feeling all kinds of feelings and all of it isn't sexual.
It's
but no
not.
one actually explains like
Right.
this is what your body is going through. This is why you're reacting. This like you might just be crying uncontrollably. It happens. It's okay. No one normalizes any of those aspects. So I'm like, you're right. People are not comfortable with their bodies or you hear a lot of times, especially in colleges where I heard this the most, you're like, yeah, you don't understand anything about vagina health. And I was like, what? You're like, I never went to GYN. What are you talking about? And like, they were just saying things out loud. And I was like, that's a thing?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, no clue. And I was like, why was that not taught? Like, this is just your health now. It's just about
Right.
whether you are able to function normally as a regular person or if you can spot things sooner before anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Nah, I don't like. So let's. I want to dive into this like that. No, that's good. I want to ask about this too. Like y'all own. So we talked about sex ed in our school system, but like, how did y'all actually? What was your education? How did you get education?
Man,
I know what you do. Let me tell you what I
I'm
remember.
a social worker now.
Look, so not to put everybody on the spot, I'll say I do remember like one time, like I remember like when I was super young, and I know this is about to be real vulnerable. this is gonna be real vulnerable, but I remember like being a kid and having a reaction in my body, right? You know what I'm saying, from watching a music video. And I asked my mom, I'm like, yo, mom,
Oh
like,
my gosh.
what's going on? And she was just like, all right, talk to your dad.
Yeah.
So my dad was trying to explain it. And I could tell, like, you know, he did his best, but he was like, you know, when you're excited and then you had to, and I'm sitting there like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, huh? But I was young. I was real young though.
Yeah.
And like, I just didn't understand. And just like the fact that, you know, I love my mom to death, but that she like passed me off to my pops, you know what I'm saying? And my pops are just like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, this is an uncomfortable topic. And I almost learned just from the interaction, and nobody did anything wrong.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we ended up having those conversations later, but at that time, it was just like, oh yeah, it shouldn't be like this.
Right.
You know,
It
because
conveyed you to be shameful of it.
yeah, I'm like, dang, okay, cool. Let me not bring this up then. If it's like that, and, you know, if we was in a car, it was just us. I'm like, it was mad awkward, you know. But like that was kind of like set the stage for the rest of my conversations outside of conversations with my peers who
Right.
don't know anything.
Right.
They know as much as I know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Nah, I feel you.
Like that was a part of my education. Like how did y'all's, you know?
So I have an older sister, and she's 9 years older than me. And she got pregnant like her first year going off to college. So that's how I knew about like how babies are made, right? And that was that. Like, and then she ended up having another baby. I love my niece and nephew. So she had 2 kids by the time she was 19. And I'm here like just a 10-year-old like, oh, that's fun, right? And my parents are like, yeah, like it's not.
Right.
So then we go through life, and I remember when I was going off to college. So now this is undergrad, me going off to college. Really no conversations about sex, but like whatever. And my dad's like, hey, like let's go and grab dinner for everybody. I'm like, yeah, cool. So we're going to grab some dinner, and like my parents have like this look, right? That like, you know, like they mean like this is serious, because like I joke all day. So my dad like gave me this look, and he was like, you need to like set up an appointment to go get on birth control. And that was that.
Dang.
Because
Yeah.
his trauma was sending his first daughter off to college and she getting pregnant.
Yes.
So here I am sending my second, my
Right.
baby girl off to college, and like that's not what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was
Wow.
no follow up either. Like,
Yes. Yes.
and that was that.
That's not helpful.
yeah. Now, how did that like what did that set you up? Like looking back,
Yeah.
Right.
like what do you think could have been done differently in that space? Like what could have been a
Like
better
just
approach?
a conversation around like, are you engaging in sex? Like,
Yeah.
and what does that look like for you? And like, how do you feel about that? And like, what has your experience been? Like, of course they're not going to say like that.
Right.
But it was just like, this is my demand of you right now as you're
Right.
entering into adulthood, right?
Right.
And this is just like an expectation that
Right.
I want you to do before you leave my house.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And was
So-
condom use ever brought up then at the same time? Because I'm like, that's not fully helpful.
So
then.
I'm the female, right? Then I have a younger brother. For my brother, it was.
Yeah.
You know, it was like dad slapping him up on like sending him off
Yeah.
to prom with like the condom in the hand, like have fun,
Wow,
you know. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so it was so different.
Wow.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
it happens all the time, like that.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should actually put that as a question on here because like the difference between sex education for boys and like girls, like
it's so different.
it is very
Yeah.
different. And now that you say
Very
that,
unfair.
Yeah.
I don't have brothers, but I promise you, I
And
know.
what ways you think? Like what ways you think? Like do we see that as different? Because that's a good lane to go down.
Because
Yeah.
guys would get like boosted and like encouraged to go ahead and live their best lives. Like sleep with whoever you want. Here, just make sure don't get it pregnant. Here's what you use. But women hold that till marriage. Do not dare even try. Keep your legs closed. You know what I mean? And then if you open them one time for whatever reason, maybe you're in love, maybe not. You're deemed a hoe or whatever kind of term they want to throw on you.
Yeah.
It's unfair.
No, that's funny you said that. So going back to our stats, one of the top 3 reasons that people who didn't have sex, so they didn't was I don't want to get a girl pregnant.
Right.
That was really that was a thing heavy in the, like growing up in the culture. Like that was the thing. Like yo, you don't do a few things, and one of those things was you better not get anybody pregnant.
Yeah.
Like that was like a
Yeah.
you know, and so yeah, like that's a part of that. And the thing is, going back to what you said, I think it's the same but different. Like Europe was like get on birth control. Us was like you better not get anybody pregnant. It was
Right.
like here are the demands. There was no partnership in education.
Right. Right.
None.
You know, it was
Right.
really
It's
was
not.
just like, hey, here's what you do, and just like a lot of that, like, cause I said so.
Yep.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
for sure.
We grew up in black households.
Yeah,
I mean, we turned out
listen.
fine though.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
Man,
definitely trial and error.
I don't know what sex education is. What are you talking about?
yeah. Like how was Money Mo? What's up?
So my vulnerable piece to share is I hit puberty at 9 years old. I was very
Wow,
young.
super early.
This is 3rd grade for anyone who doesn't get it. Like 2nd grade, I developed a chest, and by 3rd grade, I was a full-blown woman. But I did not know that, right? I'm thinking like a child, and when I tell you when it first came, I didn't know what it was, was very unprepared, had no understanding of what was happening to me. I was freaking out. I kind of thought I was like bleeding out or something, or like I had an accident on myself. I was home, thankfully, but I didn't get it. And I'm freaking out in the bathroom for like an hour. My sister sees me. She runs and gets my mom. My mom hands me a pad and says, "Wear this," right? That's all I recall being the answer. Like, wear this and don't tell anyone.
Wow.
So I went it wasn't until 5th grade that 2 of my friends, we were all the tallest in the class. One of them said, I got mine. And the other one, like a few months later, I got mine. And they thought they were the first. And I'm like, I've been chilling and doing this for 2 years, struggling, freaking out.
Wow.
Every month. It was always something. Like, I didn't look like the rest of the kids. And I had to wear bras, like real bras that would come undone. I couldn't run around and do certain things like everybody else anymore. And it was just like freaking out that I'll mess up my skirt. I think I just developed high anxiety in elementary school because I knew I didn't understand fully what was happening. No one ever really gave a name. My sister eventually, because she's 3 years older, told me what was happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. But I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
You know what I mean? I didn't know that I could have kids at that point if anything ever were to happen to me.
Right.
And then even going to the doctor, I remember my mom took me when I was very young. And I remember it was a male doctor. And he's, you know, he does the vaginal exam and he's checking and he's like this. And he showed her the hymen and said, if that rips, then, you know, she had sex or something like that. And I was, again, a very small child. This was the most uncomfortable I felt. And no one ever explained anything after that with me. Like, I just knew that, oh, my God, they would know if anything. You know what I mean? It was like, those things were ever, same thing. Like, you kind of just dropped off and, you know, fend for yourself, figure it out. It's like, I don't know what's going on to me.
That's the fear-based piece.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, 100%.
And so young.
Girl.
Yeah.
I've been an old woman for many years.
That's why you lucky 50 at heart.
Literally.
But, yo, like, a lot of that, too, at least for me, a lot of the conversations I had that did not happen, a lot of that was, especially for the women in my life, a lot of that was church driven. So I coming up, I was in Church of Christ, you know what I'm saying, and like which is very rule based doctrine, all of that, right? And so like the church, honestly, and like Christianity in general, like and all different, not just Church of Christ, but all the different denominations and all of that, like 100% play a role into the miseducation because it's really like the shame culture, the lack of conversation. It's like, and I have not read anywhere that's a part of anything. Like just even if you wait into marriage for religious reasons, and that is perfectly okay. Like it is nowhere in there that says don't talk about this.
True.
Right. I have not seen that yet. And it's like, that is, like, we're creating a wave. The fact that that's the number one answer why people aren't having sex because, oh, it's against my morals and religion. It's like, okay, great. But that's not coming along with education.
Right.
Like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, that's to each his own, but we're not educated.
Yeah.
And so I want to even ask y'all, and I don't know, we haven't delved into people's religious backgrounds here, but like, from either experience or what you know, or maybe even what you've seen or the kids you work with, like, how is that affecting, you know, our next generation or us, like adults, you know?
Yeah. I thought you
No, you can go.
They like, listen, he trying to set us up for it.
I mean, I don't ever remember. I went to many churches, so it wasn't just Church of Christ. I was just a church hopper from from birth until about 18. But I remember only hearing "don't have sex," right? And by the time I was maybe in my teens, I remember there was one class about, and it was for young adults, and it was just about don't wake love before it's time, and that was found from like Solomon. There was no more like information as to like how to not wake love before. So you know what I mean? It's like I have talked to a lot of young people who are like, I grew up in the church, and they usually say, I'm waiting till marriage, or they'll just want to get married so they can have sex. And I'm like, that's interesting, but is that the best course of action? Like, do you understand what that actually entails? Why do you want to just get married to just have sex? And she's like, but they're telling me I have to wait. I was like, okay. But she's like, but they're not telling me how to wait.
That was heat.
And I'm like, you know why? They didn't wait. But like, honestly, it's like people don't know how to wait because it's not actually something that's taught. They're just told. And so anything you kind of do or slightly do is like the shame comes. It's, man, I don't know. I think you're right. It's a big part of why the miseducation is heavy.
Oh,
And it just like, why does it always have to go back to shame and fear, right? And I'm just thinking about like conversations with my students. Like, I want to wait. Like, they'll say like, I want to wait, but like no one is having that conversation of how.
Yeah.
Or if you do decide to engage in something, like, well, why do you feel bad about it? You know? So,
Yes.
shame and fear, man.
Yeah. That's a large part of what it is.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, it should not be that way.
At all.
You know?
At all.
Because there's other ways to go about it. And even like what that leads to is people don't know things medically.
Right.
You know? Even
right.
like we saw the stats up there, like a lot of schools don't require that. Like there's some medical components and things you probably need to know. Like if you don't, like you said, in general, people with prostates, people with, vaginas, like the idea of knowing yourself and knowing if things could be happening
Yes.
and knowing this and knowing what that, like all of that education is like kind of stripped away from folks just because of the fear of like, devaluing your morals or whatever it is.
Which is interesting. Like, where have we ever learned that knowing more or learning more or understanding more tells you to make poorer decisions? Like,
Right.
you make wiser decisions, more like thought through decisions. You know what I mean? The more they know, the more likely that they'll wait because they don't necessarily feel pressured
Right.
to just have, I don't understand.
Right. And you're right. Ignorance is not bliss. It's pain and poverty and trouble for sure.
Yeah.
And then, if you know, and even if you have those conversations, because the mystique, like as a kid, not I'm an adult, like the mystique is not there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because folks know. But
Right.
as kids,
Yes.
the mystique around sex was like, yo, you know what I'm saying? You about to be walking on, it's about to change. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's really what it was.
Yeah.
It was just that mystique.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that people, especially college I went to, folks was like, yo, I ain't gonna put no, folks was getting married for that.
Yes.
Like, all right, listen, it's like
Yes.
we compatible, but we ain't gonna be able to wait.
The goal is ring by spring. Like that was it. And the hormones, they could not stop themselves. So it's like,
Listen.
we gotta get married. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we gotta unpack that, like, yo, okay, like that's a part of relationships, but when you get married and all that, but it's like that's not necessarily
All there is.
what you gonna be disappointed.
Right.
What?
Yes.
You still don't know your body.
At all. What do you like?
Like,
know?
even though I'm sharing my body with you because we waited until marriage, like, I still don't know. Like, no one. So,
Right. Right. And even, both of you work in this space. Oh, this is good too. Okay. We got the experts here. So I can imagine, like, you don't all of a sudden, like, go years without having education or having, like, shame talking about it. Then all of a sudden be comfortable. So you probably are getting into relationships and marriages where, like, you can't even be open and honest about your own sexual experience with your partner.
right.
And so I can like even imagine how that as teens is shaping like worse relationships, especially sexual relationships, because that is a part of it when you're with your partner for people.
Yeah.
Because you can't talk about it. You just
Right.
kind of exist, So like, I know you stepping into the marriage and family therapy world, like, is that a part of it?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's been rough. I've seen so many couples say like, "Oh no, we waited and we regret it." I was like, well, why? It's like you would think there's some pride or some reward afterwards, but there was none. And then they were also like, the shame didn't leave us. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing the right thing, even though they are in a committed marriage and it's just the two of them. Like, no, nothing has changed. And all those years of dating and having to stop themselves, it's almost like triggered their bodies to not engage that way with each other, and it kind of takes away that attraction, that desire, and then their ability to even want to build on that because it feels wrong.
Right.
Oh my gosh. You're right. I'm like, that's not a relationship.
is life?
I'm saying, like, what are we doing?
Low-key traumatized hearing that.
You know?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine how that helps with like bringing children into the world either. Like, that experience won't feel loving and like catering and like, oh my gosh, like we made you in
Sounds like a
love.
business plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
And I've seen so many people going through like all kinds of adultery and issues because they can't talk about sex with each other. One is not comfortable having it. The other one, the way they want it isn't the way they want it. Like, they want it a little rougher. They want it a little softer, and they can't speak
Right.
on
Right.
it. You know what I
Right.
mean? No one is exploring, let's try this. It's so many things.
and it's also lacking with teenagers too. So like a lot of like female students, like they'll have certain questions about like what's going on with their body, and they'll bring it up to their mom, and the first thing is like, well, what are you doing? And it's like, I mean, anybody can get like a yeast infection off of nothing. Like, I don't
Right.
have to,
Sugar.
like
Sugar.
and
Yes.
because they're so like closed in with not like they're experiencing something, but they can't go to mom because mom thinks they're doing something, and then they finally get into a relationship because like nothing was ever like a safe space was never created, and it's like it lacks there too. So then they become like kind of not like forced, but kind of like, yeah, I'm doing it because like he wants to do it. He's like, are you enjoying it? Like, no, like like. But then that leads to them being an adult woman who still haven't found their body yet, and you're still indulging in things that should be pleasurable for you, but it's not because of the history that you had.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And you're relying on him or whoever your partner is to pretty much tell you what you're supposed
what you
to
like.
Yeah. Ooh.
Right.
That's tough.
It'd be rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so the other side of that too is kind of like the shame and fear. The other part of miseducation is kind of like reckless abandon. You just like caution to the wind. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, listen, to hell with it. I'm going all in. And so, you know, I'm just saying because you don't know. Like, listen, you don't want to do that. And working with kids, especially, I'm interested in that high school piece. Do you see some of that? Where it's just like, yo, I'm going in because.
Listen.
You know?
Risk it all.
And you know, like, and you know, because like I'm the secret keeper too, right?
Right.
So that's hard in itself, and I just always need to have the dialogue, like, just like be safe, because there are kids that's just like, I like it, and I'm gonna do it, and I know that I can trust you with telling you whatever. I really can't talk to my parents about it, but I'm like, are you being safe though?
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And it's like, and are you like having consensual sex, and what does that look like? Do you know your body?
Right.
Because if you can't tell me biology of your body, then maybe we should not be engaging in nothing, right?
Speak on it.
Nothing. And so at first, it's you can tell like they're just super like, I don't even know why Miss Chandler wants to talk about this, but it's like, and I'm just like, so like I'm here, like what's going on?
Right.
You know, like what questions do you have? And and it's like, and if I can't answer it, then we have the educators that come in that can answer it, right? And I just want people to just like love yourself, love your body, and when you are ready to engage in something that's sex, and we can say sex, because a lot of them don't even want to say sex.
Right.
Like, how are you gonna talk about something that you're doing? You can't even.
What do they call it? The nasty. They call all kinds of things. It's like, why does it have to be
like
nasty?
I was just like with my sneaky link.
Yeah.
You know what that means, Miss Chandler? Like, no, I don't. I really don't. Like, I don't speak that. So, and then on the opposite end is just like, oh, I'm gonna wait, and like, what does that look like? Or like, I'm in a relationship with somebody, we've been together for however many months or years. So it's all different. But it's a lot of miseducation.
I agree 100%. And I like what you said. I mean, even about that, like when people not being able to speak about it openly, like, you know, when I have kids, you know, I have a boy, and hey, listen, that's a penis, brother.
Yes.
Hey,
yes.
I'll be honest with you. Listen, that's what that is, and we're gonna talk through that. We're not going through whatever the other pet names.
No.
No. That's a penis, and this here you're gonna learn early. Like, you know, same thing. I have a daughter, same conversation. This is what it is, and because that adds to kind of like that mystique or like that fear.
Right.
So now we breaking that early.
And it's so important because I saw something on social media at some point, and it was someone speaking on a child went to the teacher and was like, my uncle licked my cookie. And so the teacher was like, next time just ask for a new cookie. And months go by, the parent comes in and she's like, yeah, my daughter has a rash on her cookie. And the teacher's like, the cookie is not a cookie. It is her vagina. Oh my God. And she missed this whole sexual abuse possibility or issue that occurred. And I'm like, it's true. Kids don't necessarily know the anatomy or the names, and it can get confusing or problematic. You know what I mean? And it's like they need to know because people are predators sometimes, and like people will take advantage of what you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The more they know.
Because people like cookies.
Yeah.
It's like they're sweet. There's something you want to eat. Why?
Yeah,
No.
that's all of that. Yeah, like we got to break that.
Have to.
Yeah.
Have to.
Yeah. So with that, when do y'all think? Because once again, you both work in the school system. When, at least at the time of this recording, I'm playing. Listen, I'm just saying. Listen, I hope we ain't saying nothing too crazy. They're gonna be asking for jobs. But when do y'all think is a good time to start these conversations? Like when is the right time?
So I've been going back and forth with this question because I want to say 6th grade. Because majority of the time, because like puberty, like you mentioned, like puberty is starting way earlier for like majority now, right? So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like what intercourse is at sixth
Right.
grade, but it's just like the biology
Yes.
of like and the anatomy of like your body and like what you will be experiencing now that your like onset of puberty has started, right?
Yes. Right.
And then like seventh grade is like it's still a refresher because like you're still getting used to that,
Right.
but it's like a little bit more now. Like you might like see somebody, you might like get like a tingling feeling, and like what does that mean, and what does that look like? So like I wanted to say sixth grade, but like it builds every year
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
up
Yeah.
until you graduate your senior
Yeah.
year, and like confidently you can say that like I know like my body, I know his body, I
Right.
know like and just have and you'll be able to have conversations once you go off.
Yeah.
Right.
So like sixth grade, I would say for me.
Yeah.
I'd say younger. I would definitely say younger. And that's, you know, these young kids know a lot. They
Yeah.
say a lot of words.
True.
They don't fully understand
Mm-hmm.
all of what they're saying, but they've seen things, videos. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I remember being in elementary school, and I remember in fourth grade, some kids are like, you were watching that? I was like, no, watching what? And they were all talking about what goes on late at night on cable
Yeah.
and TV. I was like, yo,
HBO was popping.
I didn't have them
HBO.
channels. I didn't know.
BET.
Oh, like a BET Uncut. Oh,
And it
listen.
hasn't changed. These kids be writing notes. They be saying
Yeah,
all kinds of inappropriate
yeah.
things. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I think once a child, especially about to be school age, they should be very aware of what their anatomy is.
Yes.
Right.
And then it should all be developmental and like build on as they get
Yeah.
older to understand, okay, all the body parts, and you should know the names. And then
Yeah.
by third, fourth grade, I think they should be talking about puberty because it's happening so early.
Yeah.
And how your body will change
Yeah.
and what you may feel, like those sort of things. And I like if they separate it so girls could feel free to speak and ask questions and
Yeah.
boys could feel free to speak and ask questions, things like that, because they have questions.
Yes.
And they don't
do.
feel like they have anyone to speak to. So I feel like, yes, if we do it like that from those ages
Yeah.
and those key things, kids will be better set.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I was thinking about this question too. And I like something that Shayla said, which is like the like sex isn't just about like intercourse. Like,
Right.
sex is
Right.
a full, like that is it's your anatomy, it's all these different things. So I really want to change it from like a point in time to almost like a philosophy of how we incorporate that into people within our sphere of influence. Like the kids we have influence over. Like, hey, we're just gonna change the philosophy. So instead of calling it a wee or instead of calling it whatever it is, like we're gonna say penis.
Yep.
Instead of like shaming, we're gonna have conversations. Like to change the philosophy from birth, like as early as we can. Like we're gonna build it up because everyone would be different. Some kids might be 5,
Right.
and something pop. And it's like, oh, I gotta have this conversation now.
Right.
You know, and so it's just a philosophy change and an approach change. So where let's start to take away the stigma, take away the shame, take away the fear, and just change that.
Right.
So people can really be empowered around it.
And it's funny because a lot of parents will tell their kids, especially when they're younger, don't let anyone touch you in these areas. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's just the perfect opportunity to explain
Yeah.
what these areas are.
Yeah.
It's like, and don't make it feel like a shameful thing, because sometimes that shame or fear is what
Right.
keeps them from saying anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, just explain what things are. And no one but the doctor or mommy, you know, and
Yeah.
keep it simple. But
Yeah.
yes, I agree.
I think it's also like how we label it too, right? So we call it sexual health and wellness because we promote mental health wellness as well.
Yes.
So when we say sexual health and wellness, we really didn't get any pushback from parents because it's like you guys are covering a lot of different things
Yeah.
under sexual health and wellness.
I love that.
So-
I love that. I love that. That's the approach. That's changing the philosophy. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay, good. What's some resources that you all would say are out for folks to use or tap into?
For teenagers?
Or what did you
And
talked about some
parents.
things that you have done? Yeah.
So-
all of that.
It's this phenomenal resource that I found called Rise, right? And they promote sexual health and wellness education in all of the inner city schools. Well, they can go into all of the inner city schools.
This is in New York, Rochester.
This is in Rochester,
Yep.
and they're through the Department of Recreation and Services.
Yep.
And they're super dope. Like they come in, their curriculum is aligned to the whatever grade level like they'll be speaking to.
Yeah.
So 9th is a little bit different from 10th, which is a little bit different from 11th and 12th and so on. They also do Zoom too. So like we brought them in last year when we were all remote. And it was nice. Like I had my 9th and 10th graders together, my 11th and 12th graders together. So 9th and 10th was more like that, like biology and anatomy, consent, what is not. 11 and 12 is more like, what is a healthy relationship? Because like teenagers really do be fighting each other in these relationships. I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
y'all are toxic, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's free.
Right.
Because, like, if it's free, it's for me. So now,
love that.
every Friday for now until the rest of the year, I have 3 educators coming in, and we rotate them out. It's a 4-week curriculum that they created. And, yeah, it's free.
Nice.
Oh,
I know,
love that.
right?
It's probably across different states and counties, depending on where you are. It's probably some of the things they can tap into.
Right. And they also do classes for parents on how to talk to your
Yes.
child.
Come
on.
Won't he do it?
You
oh,
know,
yeah.
like,
yeah.
and they can either host like parents like in school, or they can do like a Zoom meeting with parents, and they're like always available by phone. Because that was our thing. Like, if we get pushback from our parents, which they can,
Right.
what does that look like? So we named it Sexual Health and Wellness.
Yep.
They have their own separate time to talk to our educators. They get a printout of the curriculum. I mean, and you can also still consent to not have your children participate.
Yeah.
But as of right now, everyone is 100% in.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. I love
They're
that.
lifers. I love them.
You go ahead, girl.
I did
yes.
Do
that.
your thing.
I did that.
Yeah.
They come after the younger ones, or they talk to the little children.
No. They start as early as 8th
Bet.
grade.
All right.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But maybe you guys can like work something out. I don't know.
Hey, now let's see.
Or pioneer something that says, hey,
Yeah.
we need to have a, yeah, I think we need to have a something that's, like you said, developments and stages. Yeah, because we got to start as early as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Got to bridge the gap.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, so we had an amazing conversation with this. And
Yes.
so this is what I'm thinking. So with this, I really do believe like there's so many different chapters we can do with this, because we talk a lot about sex education specifically for teens and all that. But I would love to do like another one. We need to talk about us. Like, okay, what do we do? Now that we adults, we done went through the trauma we went through. Ain't nobody really tell us nothing. We need to really dive into that. You know what I mean? So that could be
Yes.
another one. The black culture specifically. So we might be talking about sex all throughout Young Black and Figuring Out for the next 12 seasons. But so I do want to ask this though before we get out of here is if you could really leave folks with a few words or just things to think about, what would they be? Like any tips, thoughts, anything for people who are listening?
I'll say, you're so funny, Shayla. I would say to educate yourself if you are very uncomfortable in the topic. Like, the best way to not be uncomfortable or to make it feel like it's something that is okay is to learn more about it. So if you have children, if you don't have children, if you're engaging in it, if you're not engaging in it, educate yourself. And there's like a bunch of people I follow on social media who are like sex educators, sex experts, who are literally promoting sexual wellness and just like body understanding. It's like, oh, just learn about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same. All of the above.
Yeah.
Got to start talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Or we're not going to see any changes.
Yeah.
Statistics are still going to continue to increase, and we don't want that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
all of the above.
Yeah, agree. And I would just say to add to that, I would say specifically to folks who are listening who haven't had these conversations, and specifically the church and religion, like we got to start to unpack that. Like conversation does not equal like condemnation. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we need to really break that. So if you're listening and you're cringing, like, oh my God, I can't believe they're talking about this, you are a part of the problem. So we need to start to get rid of that. Start to make these things to be more transparent, or we are going to continue, because it's not. This isn't just a good conversation to have. Like, people's lives are at stake because they think they're experiencing things because they weren't prepared and equipped, and like it's affecting their lives. So this is a serious thing, and like, we can't afford to not educate and talk about these things anymore. You know. Yeah, and so probably if you're listening right now and you're thinking, what in the world are they talking about? Look. We might be right.
We might be wrong.
But today we probably not.
We're not wrong.
Hey, but at the end of the day, we just young, black, and figured it out.
CC on the track, boy.